Hello and welcome everyone to this new video about front-end development. In this video, I will be talking about Cascading Style Sheets or CSS. I will go only through the basics in this video, and hopefully in the next video, I will do more advanced stuff. I will show in this video that you can style your HTML page in three ways. The first way is the style attribute, which we already used in the previous tutorial. Then I will show a special HTML tag called the style. Inside this tag, we can define styles for our page. And there is also a third way to add an external style sheets, and that way is a link which we can put inside the header. So a basic style consists of two main parts. The first part is the selector and then the declarations. So here's the first declaration. It ends up with this semicolon, and here we start another declaration which ends up here. I missed here a semicolon, and this declarations is surrounded with these curly brackets. The declaration consists of a property such as color or font, which we saw in the previous videos, then a colon, and then a value. And of course, we have this semicolon here. Inside one style, we can put multiple properties, for example, a color, background color, a font, or many other properties which we will see in this tutorial. Some of the common properties which we will be changing using style sheets is colors, font, border, padding, and margin. Three properties define what we call the box model. We will see that the margin controls the space surrounding the box, padding controls the space inside the box or the inset, and the border properties control the color, width, and the styling of the border of this box. I will also start touching the display properties. I will show that there are two main display properties. We will explain two values to this property, the block and inline values, and see how this will affect the ordering of the elements in the HTML document. I will also introduce two another HTML tags, the span and the div. The span helps us styling text, and the div element is a container which helps us arranging other HTML elements inside the document. In this video, I will start touching on the div element, but in the next videos, we will get more experience using this element. So let's start coding. As you can see, I already made a folder for our tutorial I called video 5, and I copied the contents of the previous tutorial inside this folder. So we already have our document from the previous tutorial here and the images. Let me run this in the live server, and I will put it side to side by vscode. So the first way to add styles to the HTML document was using this style attribute here, as we saw in the previous tutorial. A second way to do that is using a style tag. Inside this style tag, we can add our styles. So we have seen in the previous video that using this style attribute has led to some copy paste of the style. For example, here to each header, and then here to each table data, and also to each table row. So now we can avoid that by targeting these elements in our style tag. Let's do that. So let us first target the table, and to do that, I can simply write table, and I have this curly bracket, and between these two brackets I can put the styles which I want to change for the table. So let me cut those here and remove the style attribute, and I will paste these styles here and put each one on a line. So as I say in the introduction, we have the selector here, which is the table. So we are targeting all table tags. So if we have another table inside this page, it will also be targeted by this style sheet, and it will have a solid border which is collapsed and with 1 pixel width. Let me save, and you will see the page is already refreshed and the style of our table has not been changed. Let's do the same for the other tags of the table. Now we can remove all the style attributes. Let us save, and as you can see, the table style has not been changed because now all this style has been taken from here. Let me toggle the screencast mode so you can see the keyboard shortcuts which I'm using. So now if we commented all these styles, and we do that in VS Code using Control#, so you can see now the comment. It's similar to the C++ multi-line comment. So it starts with / and then star and end up with star and another /. Let us now save and watch what would happen to the table. So you can see that the styling of the table has returned to the default values. Let's undo these changes using Ctrl Z, save. Notice now that for the TH tag, TR, and TD, we are using the same style, basically a border which is solid with 1 pixel width. We can avoid repeating these properties 3 times by simply targeting more than one tag in our style. And we do that using the comma. So we can write a comma, then the second tag which we want to target, like the TR, and then the third tag, which is TD, and so on. Now we can delete these 2 styles here and save, and you can see that the style has not been changed. And now if I change the style here for 2, it will be changed for all these 3 tags. Let's now target these 2 paragraphs here. I will cut the style from this paragraph and add it here. So we add the selector for the paragraph, which is P, the name of the tag, and here I will add the styles. And now if I saved, you can see that the 2 paragraphs has been targeted by this property since we have the tag P here. So any paragraph inside this page will be targeted by this property. Even if I added now a third one and fourth one and so on, it all will be changed like this. But what if we want another style for this paragraph here in the middle, for example? So how can we change any styling property of this paragraph? There are 2 other ways to select which tag to be styled in the document. One of them is using the class attribute. So for example, I can go here inside this second paragraph and I can add an attribute called class, and I can give it a name, let's say different style. And now I can target all elements which have this class different style. And to do that, I go here inside the style tag and I add first a dot, then the name of the class which I want to target. In our case, it's different class. And again, I have the curly brackets, and inside that I can add the properties which I want to change. So for example, background color, let's put it to green and save. You can see now that color here is been changed to green. There is a third way to target which element you want to style, and that is using the attribute ID. So each HTML element can also have an attribute called ID for identifier, and you can give it a certain name which is supposed to be unique inside the whole HTML document. So for example, I will give this paragraph a name, maybe second paragraph, and we can target this ID. And for that, we use the hash now, and then the ID of the element we want to target, which is here second paragraph, and now the curly brackets, and inside that we can change the properties which we want. And let me put here the background color and maybe to blue and save. And you can see now that the paragraph has a blue background. Now maybe you have noticed that this middle paragraph here is targeted with 3 style sheets. So the first one is the P, that's because it's a paragraph, so it should be changed by the styles inside this P, then using the class name here, and then using its ID. You will ask yourself which one of these would be applied at the end. In CSS, there is a rule called specificity, and this controls which selector will be applied at the end. And this is done by assigning priorities to the different rules. For example, the lowest priority has the tag rule because this is the most public one. Then the class rule, since multiple elements can have the same class, and the highest priority has the ID style, since in one page, one element should have this ID. However, as you know, we can even change the style here, and this is called inline styling using this attribute style. And if we change the background color here, let's put it to aqua, for example, and save. Sorry, I changed the wrong paragraph. I wanted to change this paragraph here. Then this inline will be applied. And this has nothing to do with the ordering of the styles or of the attributes here. So even if I put the style attribute at the beginning here, you can see the style still has been chosen by this attribute. The same here, even if I put the ID selector here at the top, and let me remove the inline style, still the style with the ID selector wins or get applied. So let me return this to the bottom here. And now you can remember the lowest is the tag selector, then the class name selector, and then the ID, and finally the inline styles can be applied if we have some here. Let me change this color here to white so it's more easier to read. And let's go again through the attributes which we are targeting in the paragraph. So we have the color of the text, the background color, and we also have the font family and some attributes related to the border and padding. So there are many other attributes which we can target. So for example, for the font, we have the font size, and this attribute can have certain values such as large, larger, medium, small, smaller, and you can see here. We can also give it a number, let's say 10 pixels, and let's save. And you can see now that the font becomes smaller. However, let me put it to small. Then there is the font weight, where we can assign names such as bold, bolder, or lighter. And also we can assign numbers for that. Let us, for example, assign bolder to have a very bold font, as you can see. And we have the font style. For that, we can choose the style to be italic or normal. Let's put italic for now. And you can see all the paragraphs now are italic, even the one in the middle, because we don't have an italic attribute here. So if we want, for example, this paragraph here to be normal, we can simply also add font style here and put it to normal. Now you can see this paragraph is not italic anymore. Now for the border, we had the border type, which we put to solid. There are other properties which we can add here, such as dashed, dotted, and other patterns. Let's put this to dashed, for example, and you can see now the border here has changed to dashed. We also set the border color. We can also set the border width as we did for the table. Let's put it to 1, make it thinner, as you can see, or we can make it thicker. Let's put it now for 2 pixels so that you can see it. Now you can see that here we are targeting the padding. So we are adding 4 pixels from each side of this paragraph. So if you remember, we said in the previous tutorial that this padding can take one value, as we've done here, and this value will be applied to all sides. If we put 2 values, for example, 1 and let's say 10 pixels, and let me save, and now you can notice that the horizontal spacing has become larger because this 10 pixel will be applied to the left and right sides, while this 4 pixel will be applied to the top and bottom. Another way yet to do that is to target each side. And that is done by using 4 numbers. So now we have 4, 10, let's say 20 pixels and 30 pixels. And let me save. And you can see now that we have different padding from each side. And this would be 4 pixels for the top, then 10 pixels to the right here, and then 20 to the bottom, and finally 30 to the left. If you want also, you can add these separately. So for example, let's say that we want 4 pixels from all sides except from the top. We want more. So we can do that by simply targeting 4 pixels for all the sides and then adding another property called padding top. So as you can see here, we have the padding left, top, bottom, and right. So let's choose padding top and let's put it to 30 pixels. So just to see that. And you can see that we have here a really huge padding. So as I said in the introduction, the padding control the spacing inside the element. And now what if we want to add more gap between the elements? That can be done using the margin, which is very similar to the padding in the rules. However, it controls the space between the elements. So let me now add margin bottom, for example, and let's put it to 20 pixels and I will save. So watch for the distance between the paragraphs. You can see that it's already increased. You can put this even to 0 and that will bring the paragraph closer to each other. You can see also the margin bottom is 0. The paragraph is not touching each other. That's because we also have the top margin. We can also target that. And now you can see there is no gap between these paragraphs. And we can also target the right and left spacing here by using the margin left and margin right. However, instead of that, we can, as we did in the padding, we can target all at the same time by just using margin and then 0 and save. You can see we still have the spacing here. The reason for that is the body, I think. Let us target the body. So we can add simply here body and let me put the background color to light cyan. And now let's target the margin and padding of the body tag and put them to 0. Let's do it first only for the left side. And let me save. And now you can see that from the left side, there is no spacing between the beige border and the paragraphs. We can do the same here for the right and the left. Let me comment this style for now, and let us add a little bit of margin here, maybe 2 pixels. So for now, we have been using 0 or positive values for this margin and padding properties. Maybe you will ask yourself what would happen if we put negative properties for that. And I would like to try this while targeting this middle paragraph here. So let's do that in this style with the ID selector. So if I came here and let me add from the top, so margin top, and let's put it to minus 20 pixels. And let's save. Please notice the top of this paragraph while I'm saving. You can see now that the second paragraph is overlapping with the previous one, and that's because of this negative margin here. That can be useful if you want to do that. However, if you've seen such a thing and you were wondering, it could be that you have added a negative number somewhere. Let us now go to the development tools in the browser and let us watch for these styles here. Let me use this selection tab here, and for example, let's select this paragraph. You can see now this paragraph with a different style is selected, and you can see here in the style tab the styles which are applied to this paragraph. So here the background color is blue and the margin top is minus 20. Let me make it is even bigger so you can even see more of the styles which applies to this paragraph. So the first styles shown here are the default style which are used in this browser for the paragraph tag. Then there are the styles which we defined inside our P selector. So these are the styles we defined here. And then the class selector, and then the styles of the ID selector. And here we have the styles, the inline styles. So let me add some of those and save. And you can see now that the style which we added here, the background color aqua, has appeared here. And notice that the styles which we wrote, for example, here in the B tag, the font style italic is deleted since this is not selected from the B selector, but rather from the class name selector here, since it has more priority as we described in the selection rules. And you can see that the background color which is used is from the inline style, since this has the more priority, and everywhere else this background color is deleted here, so meaning that it's not used from this style. This is very helpful for debugging. So if you did not get the right style which you want, and you can always come to the development tools and then you can debug and see which one has been chosen. And there is here in the bottom this box model, and it shows you the different values which we added to the margin and padding and border. So as I said here, from the outside you have the margin. So from the top we have this minus 20 pixels which we added, and from every other side we have the 2 pixels since we have it here in the B selector, in the tag selector. And for the padding you can see that we have also 4 here from left, right, and bottom, and from the top we have 30 pixels, and this is selected also from the B selector style here. And you can also see that here we have the border width, which is 1.6. So for example, if we came here now to the ID selector and we choose the border width to be 0 pixels and save, you can see now that the border, we have this dash here, that meaning the border is not taking any space. But if we added here more, it says 3 pixels, this will appear here. However, the unit used here is not pixels. So for now, let me close the development tools and make the vscode area larger. And let me remove also this minus margin here and save. And now let us talk about the display property. So every HTML element has a default value for its display property, and this default value depends on the element type. Notice that, for example, here we have the paragraph elements, which has been displayed over the whole line. So even if we make now our page wider, you can see that these two paragraphs here are taking the full width of the page, although they are smaller, they could only take till here. And that's because the default display property of the paragraph is set to the value block, which means take the whole width of the page. For other elements, such as the inputs here, for example, and the button, the default behavior of the display is inline, and that means take only the width which you need. However, these here are taking multiple lines because we added these breaks. Let me remove the break and show you what will happen. So now we removed all the breaks here. Also, notice here the image inside, and let me save, and you can see that all of them are on one line. Now using the display property, we can make this element takes the whole width of the page. Let's do that, for example, for this input text element, and I will use the inline style here. and put the property display to block and save. You can see now that the input element has taken the whole width. Now let me go to the paragraphs and change the display to inline. I will use the tag selector so I can target these 3 paragraphs here at the same time. So let me put the display to inline block and save. You can see now that the first paragraph is still taking the whole page, and that because it's needed. The text here is long, while these 2 paragraphs now is smaller in width and they are displayed beside each other. Now, if you want this paragraph also to be thinner, you can do that using the width property. So let me target now the width of all the paragraphs, and let's put it to a large number such as 400 pixels and save. You can see now all the paragraphs have the same width, which is 400, but this is not what we want. We wanted these 2 paragraphs here to stay small and this one to be thinner and maybe even not 400, let's say 200. And now let's use the property max width and let me save. And you can see now that this paragraph is taking 200 because this is the maximum allowed width. However, these 2 paragraphs are smaller, and that's okay because we only set the maximum width. We did not set any boundaries to the minimum width. We can of course do that. We can put the minimum width to be also 200 pixels. So that's actually like putting the width to be 200 exactly. And let me save and watch for the width of these 2 paragraphs. You can see now they are wider. Let me remove this and save. Now let us style this paragraph here even more, and for that I will use the class selector. So I will go to this paragraph and give it a class, and let me call it top paragraph, and let me target it here. And first let's make the padding to 4 pixels and the font style to normal, and we put the font weight to lighter. And let's say that we want to change the sum of the text here. So for example, only this HTML tag here. So in the previous tutorial, for example, we added a tag called strong and surrounded this HTML with the tag strong, and we make it bolder. There's another way to do that, and for that we can use a tag called span, and this span tag can be used to style subparts of the text. So here I now replace the strong tag with the span. Now if I save, you can see that this HTML is back to normal, so nothing has been changed. So by default, the span does not change anything in the text, but it's useful because it allows us to add an ID or a class name. So let me here add a class name and let me call it subtext, and then let's target this class. And now we have a new element which we can style, and we can add all the properties which we want here, such as color. For example, we can put the color to green. Background color, we can also change it. Let's put the background color to black, for example, and let me save. And you can see now here the style has changed. Let me remove this background color and add the border width. Let me make it 1 pixel. And of course we need the border style, and let's put it to solid and save. And now you can see we have a thin border here, and let me make it thicker. Notice that here we have a space after the L, and that's because these spaces here are wrapped to one space. You can remove that and save, and now this space is gone. By default, the span has a display property with inline block value. We can change that. Let me put it to block and save. And notice that now this span element is taking the whole width of the parent element, which is this paragraph here. While if we change this property for one of the paragraphs, let's say for example for this second paragraph, if we put the display property back to block and save, so it will take the whole width of the page because this paragraph is inside the body element, and then it should take the whole width of the body element. Let me remove this block now. And let's assume now that we want to put these 2 paragraphs in top of each other. One way to do that is to put these 2 paragraph elements here inside a tag called div, which stands for division. The div element is a container element which can have other elements inside it, and you can think of it as a box which helps us do complex layouts. So let me now save, and notice that these 2 elements now is taking the whole width of the page, and that's because the div element is by default a block element. So let's change that and put the display property of this element to inline block and save. And now you can see that we are back to the previous case where these 3 paragraphs are beside each other. And let me give this paragraph here a back color so we can see the space it's taking, and let me save. Now we can simply here, for example, add a break and save. And you can see now that these two elements are on top of each other. Another way to do that, we can change the style of this element here. We put the display to block, and that would give us the same result. So as you can see, nothing has been changed. In the coming tutorials, we'll be using the div tag to do very beautiful styles and more complex layouts. So the last thing I want to show in this tutorial is how to put these styles in a different file. You can see now here that the styles are very long and they are taking quite a part of the HTML document. And since they are the style of the document and has nothing to do with the content, so HTML should contain only the content, it's better for us to put them in a different file. And to that, I will cut the styles and I will create a new file here. Let's call it styles.css. And inside this file, I will paste the styles. And here we don't need this style tag since we are not inside now the HTML document, but rather inside a CSS file. And now let me save the page. Now, as you can see, we have lost all the styles from the page. So to apply those styles to the page, we need to add the tag link here in the header. And inside this link tag, we have an attribute called rel and stands for relation. And that means here we are defining the relation of the current document with the file which we will attach to this document by using this link tag. And the relation here is style sheet. And we need a second attribute, which is the reference. So we used href. And this href is similar to the href of the anchor tag, which we saw in the previous tutorial. Here we can add an absolute path or a relative path. And since we have our style sheet here in the same folder, we will use a relative path. I will put this path to styles.css. And that's it. This tag is a void tag, so it does not need closing. Now if I save, you can see we are back. We are using the styles from our class here. And now if we want to change the styling of this document, you don't need to touch the HTML document, but rather you can go to the styles.css and change it here. And that's it for this tutorial. If you like it, please give it a thumb up and subscribe the channel. And I hope I will see you in the next videos. Bye.